Hey everyone, welcome back to CryptoCache. Thank you for joining me here today. We're going to take a look at Dogelon, or Elon. I'm not sure really how to pronounce it, but we'll just say Elon for now. And if you're new to the channel, please consider liking and subscribing if you find benefit here today. My goal is to help you become more of an effective trader and just share my knowledge with the world so everyone can be a little bit safer in this world here. And this is a request from one of my community members. Thank you very much, Keith, for requesting that I cover this here. And moving forward, just note that I have a trading community, link in the description below. Check that out if you'd like, because I do share every single trade that I take with my community members. I send out signals. We have trading bots. It's a really cool experience. Check that out. Now, with Bitcoin here, first thing to note, it looks kind of funny because there's a lot of lines here, but if you look at the 1 hour chart, it might make a little bit more sense. You can just see some ascending patterns here that eventually broke out, right? Each one of them has performed the same way. Right now, we kind of have this ascending pattern upwards. So we'll see here soon how it plays out. Bear in mind, a lot of this has to do with the fact that we had news over the weekend, or Friday rather, of course, with that, what is it, BITO, that is essentially the ETF exchange that is going to be trading tomorrow for Bitcoin. At least as Bitcoin within the exchange traded funds. So that goes live tomorrow morning, 6:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I think pre-market's at 1 a.m. But the bottom line here is that, the news was right here. This is the news. People bought the news, and oftentimes, that they buy the hype and then sell the news, right? So in other words, we might see a retracement here tomorrow. That's my speculation just based on that sentiment. May or may not happen. This is shaping up to look like it wants to break out to the upside, but I'd be very surprised if it doesn't come down here soon. But really, ultimately, we'll see soon. When the price comes up here to test the resistance, about 63,500 plus or minus 100 or two, we're going to see what happens here soon. Okay. Now, 63.6 is essentially the major resistance level based on the 1 day chart, right? So if we take the top, it was rejected about 4 times in a row. That was back in April. That is essentially when Bitcoin hit its highest point ever. And we haven't seen that since. So we're coming up on that soon. If we can break that, different story, right? New all-time high for Bitcoin. It's going to continue to the upside. Recommend just going along with Bitcoin regardless at that point. For right now, we may see a break to the downside here, closer to 55, 60,000. We'll see soon. Anyways, just want to throw that out there. And let's see. Let's take another look here at Dogelon. Sorry, Elon. And what we do is we always look at the big picture here, right? So I pulled this up, and it was the oldest one here because, of course, KuCoin has a fairly recent one, but this one goes back a little further back for Polynex. So in other words, we had a pretty big ICO date, right? The price jumped way up, way down. A lot of people got wrecked. Then it came back up, and more people got wrecked, thinking it was just going to come right back up and break that. Yes, it did break above there on the 1 day chart. The day after, it just got destroyed. So just keep that in mind. I remember covering that beforehand. And what's interesting of the timing on this, May 12th, that's Elon candle. We were commonly referred to as the Elon candle. So he essentially destroyed his own coin in that 1 day there with the the announcement of, what was it? Tesla is no longer accepting Bitcoin. That drove everything down. And of course, May 19th, it's really small in scale here, of course, but that continued the continuation of the craziness and the negativity and the sell-offs for the China candle. We all know that. We probably experienced that, I'd venture to guess. If you didn't, good for you. If you got in after May 19th, then you're probably doing quite well with your portfolio. Regardless of that, I covered this previously, advised nobody gets in and they got wrecked. I got a lot of people requesting, how do I recover from this? Well, you really can't recover from that depending on where you got in, right? But for right now, good news is silver lining. We got some price increase here, of course. It may not seem like a lot, but it's a pretty significant increase in just say about a week or two time. We're looking at about 760% in approximately, what is that, about 2 weeks here. So all in all, pretty good. If you'd gotten in right around 5, I'm going to skip the zeros and just say 5. And you're in right now at about 43. That's a pretty strong return. So good for you. You're probably wondering how much further up it's going to go. Well, that's hard to say specifically. We can look at the, we can look at Fibonacci retracement, kind of estimate, so to speak, based on support and resistance levels. But generally speaking, at this point, it's difficult to understand. But the good news is here, this is what we can do. We can look at a smaller time frame to identify, support and resistance zones to see kind of where it's going to continue. Based on that sentiment alone. But looking just at the 1 day chart, you can kind of see as somewhat of a healthy bull run. In other words, I really like runs that come up and over And, well, that's a terrible line, but you get the point, right? Up, over, like a staircase pattern. That's what we ultimately want to look for. So this does have signs of that. Just keep in mind, this is such a, it may not seem like a lot, but that's like 65%. That's a pretty significant increase in just a short amount of time. And I'm speculating that, that happened within, 4 to 8 hours, perhaps. We'll see here soon. But this, this increase, it will likely retrace, but also maybe not. And I know that sounds crazy, but we don't have enough data really in the past to identify how it's going to behave, except for the fact that it has a tendency of ramping up when there's a lot of news and kind of selling off, when it happens. So anyways, we'll take a look at that. So let's just go ahead and look at the charts, see what's going on. And just bear in mind, we don't have a 200-day simple moving average. The 50 is working as a support level. RSI is up over 70 on the one-day chart. That's very standard for a coin like this, considering the circumstances. So really, we can't really rely on that. What we can do is, why don't we just draw this out here for now and kind of see where we're at. We can kind of use that later here. And it is kind of coming to fruition to an extent. You can kind of see the support level here drawn for the very first first candlestick here, or the the first with this. I mean, really, if we look at what is it? Yeah, that one too. I mean, ultimately, it is kind of showing these support and resistance zones. So there's a good chance we might see the price kind of consolidate up around here. But all in all, not really much to understand at this point with the Fibonacci retracement. We'll look at shorter time frames, kind of see what's going on. Okay, but we can kind of estimate that if it were to continue on this path here within just say 2 to 4 weeks, we'll see somewhere in the range of about 93 to 100. That's a possibility. But again, that's just using Fibonacci retracement based on the short amount of data that we have here, essentially going from the lowest to the most recent highest point. That's what you're typically supposed to do. Let's go ahead and take a look at the 4-hour chart and really just see if there's any kind of extra information. Again, not a whole lot, both moving averages, prices above that is pretty standard. Let's take a look at the RSI, yep, up and over. We do have a convergence on the MACD, which was roughly what? Let's take a look at that. Right here at 1700. All right, so we'll go ahead and mark that on the cloud, or take a look at the cloud next and mark that on the 4-hour chart. Because if you're new to the channel, the 4-hour MACD convergence is probably one of the best, most utilized. Well, I wouldn't say it's the most utilized, but it should be the most utilized for swing trading, because the fact that it kind of helps you understand when the bears are losing control and the bulls are taking control. So if you know anything about converging, you can see here this big example here. For example, that's where the bulls are in control. The bears took a slight amount of control here with that amount of volume, and then the bulls took more control. So generally speaking, in the last 8 to 10 hours, it's been nothing but bullish convergence, right? But there's a shift that happens when the bears lose control and the bulls take control. That's what a MACD convergence is, and that's what I just marked here. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Ichimoku cloud really quick and see if there's a correlation. Because oftentimes when you see basically on the cloud, when the price breaks above the cloud, it's considered a buy signal. When it's below, it's considered a sell signal. So if you're not using this, you want to try to get on board with that. Honestly, it works very, very well, because if you can see here, and again, the information is a little weird because of the way that this coin is traded, with the amount of like just how small it is in number. You can see the candlesticks are like specific increments. That's kind of a strange. In other words, when the shorter time frame you get, the less data you have. But bottom line, when the price is above the cloud, it's considered a buy signal. Obviously, it went above here. So what I'm trying to get at is a simple fact that when you look at the price and you see the cloud come above, there's price that comes above the cloud, this would have been a good entry point, somewhere right in this range here. So plus or minus, I would say 5 or 10 hours, just before the 4-hour candlestick gave us an indication of a buy signal on the MACD convergence, we got the same exact signal on the 1-hour chart for the Ichimoku cloud. So these are things I typically like to look for. It's kind of like a double rainbow. You've probably heard me say that before, because it's kind of a term that I like to use to describe it, because it's just two really good things coming together, right? So anyways, something really good to look for, and what you can do, as simple as this, is you can just set an alert, and you can just go ahead and say when it's crossing the Ichimoku cloud, lead 2, and then it'll notify you as soon as the price comes above, right? So something like that is advantageous to kind of set up alerts for, so you can kind of see what that might look like in the big picture, but generally speaking, that's what I try to identify. Regardless, enough about that. Let's go ahead and see if we got some indication here on TD sequential. So in other words, we do still have about 5 hours left of bullish momentum that could occur. You can see the price is kind of getting rejected out a little bit, but is breaking above right around 43. So I think there's a strong likelihood we'll see a continuation on this bull run here. How much higher it'll go, again, hard to specify. We really have a lot of potential resistance levels that we can get to. But just bear in mind, the price, wherever it closes in the 1 day chart is probably the most beneficial, most effective thing to look at, right? So if we look at the 1 day chart, we've got about 45 minutes left before this candlestick closes, okay? So if we do that and we look at this here, wherever this candlestick closes, that's considered to be a resistance level, right? That's just kind of the natural way of things. And then, the next 24 hours will establish another support and resistance level, right? The more of those happen, the more likely they are to either bounce or reject. So for example, let's go ahead and get rid of this just so we can kind of see what I'm talking about. If you look back here and you see this right here, this little series and continuation here, we have a support and resistance channel. Essentially, the price kept going high, but kept getting rejected, but it also wouldn't go any lower. It wouldn't go any lower than 25, and eventually just took off. Same thing back here as well, 13 upwards of 15. So if you kind of take that into consideration, this run right now, depending on where it closes, it'll probably likely consolidate and go sideways from there, just based on the way that it's continuing to increase. But the healthy thing about this and the good thing about this is that every time it increases, it has a state of consolidation followed by another increase. That's a healthy bull run, and I hate to even say that that is the case here on a coin like this, just based on the simple fact of what kind of coin it is. Most meme coins, it can be very difficult to anticipate, but history has a tendency of repeating itself, and in this scenario, I feel as if it's going to continue to make those kind of higher highs, which it is effectively doing, but just keep in mind, we got to wait for this candlestick to close to know specifically where it's going to go next, right? So I'm speculating once this candlestick closes, that'll be the resistance level, and then we'll see it kind of probably retrace and do something very similar to this, where it kind of comes down a little bit and over, and then eventually it'll come up, right? And it'll kind of increase back up and do probably another leg up somewhere. Again, how high it'll go, it's hard to say specifically. Once this candlestick closes, we can kind of get a better readout from that. According to the, and again, it's not super official, but according to this here, when you go ahead and just go from lowest to highest point, you can kind of see that the highest point we're going to get probably in this next 2 or 3 weeks is, again, right around 93. So I think 93 is probably the higher point. Maybe 100 is probably the max for now, at least without it, getting over exaggerated and getting too high too fast, right? Because again, it could shoot straight up to that 93 right now, for example. But you know what's going to happen with that? It's going to come back down 80 to 90% of the way it originally started. We don't want that. We want to identify and use the positive momentum moving forward, right? So the fact of the matter is it has a very healthy progression so far. So as long as this doesn't get too overextended, then we're going to be in really good shape to be able to see a continuation. I recommend, if you're going to consider taking entry, wait for this candlestick to close, let the price continue sideways, and let it establish support and resistance zones first. That's why I'm stressing that here, because this is a kind of uncharted territory for the most part. Yes, we have a previous all-time high that's much higher, but it hasn't done anything like this, hasn't performed like this in a while. So if you're going to get the most out of it, wait for the price to retrace a little bit, establish that support level, and then add to your position. That's the best way to do it. That's how I do it. That's how I stay safe. That's why I'm always profitable, and I always feel comfortable sharing my trades with my community members. For one, because I avoid coins like this. Don't get me wrong, this isn't terrible. It's just, the volume and volatility is off, and it doesn't make the most sense for a healthy investment. Again, this is investing, this isn't gambling, and for lack of better terms, these coins can be somewhat of a gamble. But all things aside, it's establishing patterns, and we want to see those patterns continue to repeat themselves, and if they do, then we're likely going to see a continuation to the upside. Right, so again, we want at least, I would say, a week, 7 days more of consolidation, just like it did back here, then we'll see another leg up. But you see here really quick how it ramped up 1 day, the second day it got rejected. That's because it moved up too quick too soon. This could happen again, just bear in mind. So I'm speculating price will come down, kind of go sideways, and come back up. So my prediction, I would say within 1 month from now, safe to presume we're going to see 93 to 100. I think that's pretty likely. Will it beat its all-time high this year? It's hard to say specifically. It depends on how Bitcoin performs, because as you can tell, this hasn't taken off until Bitcoin started ramping up here recently. So bear in mind, there's a lot of factors involved, but it's got a long ways to go before it gets up to the 200s, right? So let's focus on one thing at a time. We want a period of consolidation followed by an increase. Let's keep stepping up that little staircase pattern, and we'll be fine. If you found benefit, please like and subscribe. If you haven't already, check out my Patreon community. I have a link in the description below for that, with a video that helps you understand more specifically what that involves, whereas I share all of my trades with my community members, and we're all growing and learning a lot together. So it's a fantastic trading community. If you benefit from that, check it out. Be happy to get to know you better. If not, that's perfectly fine. Thanks again for joining me here today. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.